Hi. As I'm sure most people are aware, we use scales as the basis for a lot of our music. And so much of our music, certainly in the Western tradition between, say, 1600 and 1900, is written either in a major scale or in a minor scale. In other words, we're using the notes of a major scale or of a minor scale to construct our chords, to write our melodies, and to put all our music together. But there are other kinds of scales around, and you may want to explore these and have a bit of fun with them. We've another quick tips film out there on the pentatonic scale that you could have a look at. And today I'm just going to spend a few moments talking about the whole tone scale. Now, as I'm sure you know, scales are a bit of a mixture of tones and semitones. So when we play a major scale, if I play C major scale, that's a very familiar sound, isn't it? But actually it's a mixture of tones and semitones. So from C to D, there's a tone being two semitones, and a semitone being the shortest distance we can travel on a keyboard. So C to C sharp's a semitone, C sharp to D is a semitone, so C to D is a tone. So C major scale goes tone, then there's another tone, and then there's a semitone, because there's no black note between E and F. Then there's a tone, then there's a tone, then there's a tone, then there's a semitone to finish. So any major scale follows that pattern: tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. And we've really got used to that sound and that particular mixture of tones and semitones. So if I play a piece of music in C major, I'm using the notes of that scale, I'm using chords built on the notes of that scale, and I'm using that particular combination of tones and semitones. That's a kind of sound we can all relate to. If I'm in a minor scale, the reason it's minor really is because I've got a different combination of tones and semitones. And we won't get too bogged down in this today, but there are two kinds of minor scale, the harmonic and the melodic minor scale. But in the harmonic minor scale, which could go like this, here's A harmonic minor. What I've got here is tone, semitone, tone, tone, semitone, a tone and a half, and then a semitone at the top. So that's a different combination of tones and semitones that makes a piece work in a minor key instead of in a major key. So here's a little piece in a minor key. So you may be able to hear the sound of that as in a minor key, but it's really happening because of that combination of tones and semitones. Well, how about a scale that only uses tones? That's what a whole tone scale is all about. And some of you may have just happened to have played one of these things. Perhaps if you're doing grade 8 on certain instruments, you might have to play a whole tone scale. But this is how it might go. So if I start a whole tone scale on C, what I'm doing is going up in tone. So a tone above C is D. Here's C. There's D. That's a tone. A tone above D is E. A tone above E is not F, but actually F sharp. So that's my next note in the scale. So therefore a tone above F sharp is going to be G sharp. And then a tone above G sharp is going to be A sharp. And a tone above A sharp is going to be, well, it could be C or it could be B sharp if you wanted it to be. But there's a whole tone scale. And that may seem very strange. You might listen to that and think, well, it doesn't sound like any scale I know, because so much music is in major scales and minor scales. But here's the whole tone scale. And of course you could call this G flat, A flat, B flat, that will be perfectly in order, so you can deal with it either way. But it gives you a new possibility. So if you're a composer wanting to do something that's a little bit out of the major minor box, you might thinking about if you can compose a piece based on a whole tone scale. And of course, you don't have to start on C. You could start on C sharp and go C sharp, D sharp, E sharp, and so on, and give yourself a whole tone scale starting somewhere else. But some composers have made a bit of a virtue of this. Debussy, for example, he likes the whole tone scales. Other composers during the 20th and 21st century have made quite a deal of this as well. And it can be kind of quite atmospheric, if you do things like this. Very atmospheric kind of piece. Could even work well in a film score, for example. So lots of things you could do with a whole tone scale. And I hope you're going to kind of experiment with it and see what goes on. Try playing one of those things on your instrument and just see if you can explore some of the sounds that might go with it and have a bit of fun working with the whole tone scale.